The light from the crystal fixture overhead splintered, casting 1,000 tiny fractured rainbows across the starched linen of the private dining room. I felt the warmth of a single tear trace a path down my cheek and swiped it away, my heart pounding with the hope that it had gone unnoticed. Around the table, the delicate sound of silver on porcelain ceased. The ensuing silence was so profound that my own pulse seemed to thunder against the dark polished wood of the walls. "This dinner is not concluded," he stated, his voice a low chill that belied the warmth of the room. "Not until you explain the reason for your tears." Lorenzo Costello's words were barely a murmur, yet they carried an undeniable authority that held every person at the table captive. His 3 security guards, imposing figures in tailored suits positioned like statues around the perimeter, shifted their weight in unison. The waitstaff vanished as if they were smoke, the ornate door clicking shut with a finality that sounded like a vault being sealed. I hadn't intended to cry. I certainly hadn't intended for him to see. Just a few weeks ago, my life was my own. I was Alara Vance, a 26-year-old pastry chef and single mother, juggling double shifts at Serafina's, one of Sovereign City's most acclaimed restaurants. My universe was a whirlwind of 4 a.m. alarms, flour-dusted aprons, and the gnawing anxiety of making rent on a tiny apartment for myself and my 5-year-old son, Leo. Then Lorenzo Costello entered my world, and every part of it was irrevocably altered. I can still picture him that first night. The restaurant had cleared out, save for his corner booth, a table perpetually reserved for him. Chef Matteo had explained in a nervous whisper that Mr. Costello always dined late, always demanded absolute privacy. I was putting the finishing touches on a trio of panna cottas when Matteo beckoned me frantically from the kitchen doorway. "He is asking for the pastry chef," he hissed, his French accent thickening with stress. "You must go, now." Peering through the small circular window of the swinging door, I got my first proper look at him. His shoulders were broad beneath a suit that likely cost more than my car, and his dark hair was swept back from a face of sharp, aristocratic angles. Even seated, he exuded. Costello looked up, and the air was stolen from my lungs. His eyes were the color of dark, bitter chocolate, fringed with lashes that were unfairly long. A faint shadow of stubble dusted his strong jaw, lending him a dangerous quality that sent a shiver of pure warning down my spine. "This panna cotta," he began, his voice a low, resonant baritone. "It is not what is usually served here." I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "I apologize if it isn't to your preference, sir. I can make something else." I did not say I disliked it. A flicker of a smile touched his lips. "It tastes the way my Nonna used to make it in Sicily. Less gelatin, more cream. Unapologetic." "Thank you," I managed, caught in the intensity of his stare. "You are new." It was a statement, not a question. 6 months, sir." He observed me for a long, silent moment, then gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit." I hesitated, glancing toward the kitchen where Matteo was making frantic motions for me to obey. "I do not bite," Lorenzo said, a glimmer of amusement in his dark eyes. "Unless I am provoked." That evening, I found myself sitting opposite the most formidable man in Sovereign City as he questioned me about my craft, my training, my opinions on balancing flavors. He listened with a focused intensity, as though my thoughts on the aeration of mousse were critical pieces of intelligence. When I finally made my escape back to the kitchen, my heart was hammering against my ribs for reasons I couldn't begin to comprehend. He returned the next night, and the night after that, always after the restaurant had closed, always asking for me. Within a week, our discussions had strayed from desserts to literature, art, and my quiet upbringing in a small town. He offered little about his own life, but I pieced together fragments. Orphaned as a boy, raised by his grandmother in the old country, arriving in America as a teenager. The hushed gossip among the restaurant staff filled in the brutal details he omitted. Heir to the Costello crime family, seizing control at 25 after his uncle's convenient demise. A man known for his ruthlessness in business and his lethality, murmured, his thumb stroking the delicate skin of my wrist. Precious things require gentle handling. The following morning, a man in a dark suit was at my apartment door. "Mr. Costello requests your presence for dinner," he said, handing me a card with an address and a time. It was not a request. It was a summons. Every rational instinct screamed at me to refuse, to pack a bag for myself and Leo and run. But something else, curiosity, or perhaps a deeper, more dangerous pull, led me to the address. It was a sleek, modern high-rise overlooking the city's waterfront. The penthouse, of course. Dinner was prepared by a private chef in his cavernous apartment, a space defined by floor-to-ceiling windows and stark Italian furniture. Lorenzo watched me across the candlelight, drawing me out with questions, making me laugh despite the tremor in my hands. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with a slight frown. "Business," he said, rising from the table. "Pardon me for a moment." While he was in the other room, I walked to the windows, gazing down at the glittering expanse of Sovereign City. From this height, the city seemed transformed, a miniature world that could be manipulated at will. Barrett. It is beautiful, is it not? His voice, directly behind me, made me jump. "Yes," I breathed, suddenly aware of his proximity, of the heat radiating from his body just inches from my back. "I could give all of it to you," he said, his voice a low whisper against my ear. "Anything you desire, Hilara. You need only ask." I turned, finding myself caught between the cool glass of the window and the solid warmth of his body. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I'm just a single mom, a baker." His smile was both predatory and possessive. "You are not just anything. You simply have not realized it yet." That night was the beginning of the end of my old life. Lavish gifts began arriving daily. Jewelry, designer clothing for me and Leo, and finally, a key to a new apartment in his building. When I have recognized the crimson flags waving in my face. Instead, I found myself captivated by his fierce attention, seduced by his intensity. The way his eyes darkened when another man so much as glanced in my direction. The proprietary hand that always rested on the small of my back. The discreet security detail that materialized whenever he couldn't be with me. It all combined to make me feel cherished and important in a way I never had before. That was before I understood the price of such devotion. Now, seated in this opulent, silent room, I felt the crushing weight of his stare as he awaited my answer. The tear had been an involuntary reaction to a text message I'd received beneath the table. A desperate warning from the one friend who still tried to reach me. "Hilara, you have to know who he really is, what he did to Julian. Meet me. I have proof." Julian. My ex. Leo's father, who had vanished 3 months ago just before I met Lorenzo. The police had classified it as a cold case, a man who had simply walked away from his life. I had always assumed he'd just skipped town, shirking his responsibilities once again. "I asked you a question, Hilara." Lorenzo's voice sliced through my chaotic thoughts, sharper this time. His handsome features were a mask of calm, but I had learned to see the subtle tension in his jaw, the dangerous light that flickered in his eyes. "It's nothing," I lied, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "I was just thinking about something sad from a book I read." His expression remained unchanged, but his fingers tightened around the stem of his wine glass, and for a moment, I thought it would snap. With deliberate slowness, he set the glass down and gave a slight nod to his security team. "Leave us." The men exited without a word, leaving us utterly alone in the cavernous dining room. Lorenzo rose with a liquid grace, circling the table until he stood behind me. His fingers were gentle as they tilted my chin upwards, compelling me to meet his gaze. But his voice was like steel. "I have known you for 6 weeks, Ilara," he said softly. "In that time, I have given you everything. My attention, my protection, my trust. The one thing I will not—" Shiver of pure terror down my spine. "He was my boyfriend, Leo's father. We broke up months ago. He left town." "Did he?" Lorenzo arched a single eyebrow. "Or did he disappear?" The way he stressed the word made my stomach clench violently. "What are you implying?" He sighed, returning to his seat and gesturing for me to do the same. "I had hoped to postpone this conversation, but it appears your friend has forced the issue." "What conversation?" "About who I am, Ilara. About the man you are with." I swallowed, my mouth feeling as if it were full of cotton. "I know who you are." His laugh was devoid of any humor. "You know the parts of me I have permitted you to see." He took a sip of wine, his dark eyes never leaving my face. "Your Julian was a thief, Kata. He stole a significant amount of money from me. When he was caught, he tried to offer information about you and the boy as a way to bargain for his life." My mind spun, refusing to process the words. "That's impossible. Julian was an accountant. He wouldn't—" "For the Bellini family," Lorenzo interrupted smoothly. "My rivals. He was their informant, embedded within one of my legitimate businesses. And when his deception was discovered, he offered you up as a diversion." "No," I whispered, the room starting to tilt around me. "That can't be true." "He showed me your photograph," Lorenzo continued, his voice relentless. "He told me you worked at Serafina's. He suggested I might find you amusing. A peace offering, he called it." Nausea churned in my stomach. "So what, you decided to go check out his ex-girlfriend for your own amusement?" "I decided to see for myself what kind of woman associated with a man like that," he corrected. "I intended a single meeting, perhaps to gather intelligence. I did not anticipate—" He paused, and for a fleeting instant something vulnerable crossed his face before it was gone. "I did not anticipate you." "What happened to him?" I asked, dreading the answer more than anything. Lorenzo's expression was unreadable. "He is alive, if that is your concern. Relocated, with a new identity, after his debt was repaid." A wave of relief washed— "She wouldn't—" "Check your phone," Lorenzo said, sliding it across the polished table toward me. "Look up her real number, not the one she's been using to contact you recently." With trembling fingers, I opened my contacts and found Isabella's entry. The number was different from the one that had sent the urgent texts over the past week. I looked up at Lorenzo, my thoughts a tangled mess of confusion and fear. "The Bellinis have been trying to find a weakness in my organization for years," he explained, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. "When Julian failed them, they moved on to their next asset. You." "Me? I'm nobody. I'm just a pastry chef." "You're the woman I care for," he said with a stark simplicity, as if that explained everything. And in his world, I was beginning to understand that it did. The restaurant around us had fallen completely silent. The staff was gone, the security team waiting somewhere beyond the heavy doors. It was just the two of us, the candles burning low, casting flickering shadows across Lorenzo's sharp, handsome features. "So all of this," I asked, the ache in my chest surprising me with its intensity. "Everything between us has been a lie? You only came to me because of Julian? Because of some mob war?" Lorenzo's expression darkened, and he leaned forward, his presence seeming to consume all the air in the room. "Do not insult what is between us," he said, each word precise and laden with danger. "Yes, circumstances brought you to my attention, but everything that has followed, every moment, every touch, every gift, that has been my choice. Because I wanted you. Because some part of you speaks to a part of me." He stood abruptly, moving to my side of the table and pulling my chair out. Taking my hand, he drew me to my feet until we were standing inches apart, his dark eyes boring into mine. "Come with me," he said. It was not a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. "There is something you must see." Outside the restaurant, his black sedan waited, the driver opening the doors the moment we appeared. Lorenzo kept a firm hand on the small of my back, guiding me with that possessive touch I had grown so accustomed to. Inside the car's luxurious interior, streets that led to the harbor. A convoy of security vehicles flanked us, peeling off to establish a perimeter as we approached. Our car stopped near a large, nondescript warehouse. Lorenzo stepped out first, his eyes scanning the area before he offered me his hand. The night air was cool and damp, carrying the briny scent of the nearby water. "Stay close," he murmured, his arm wrapping around my waist as he led me toward the massive metal door. "No matter what you witness inside, remember that you are with me. No one will harm you." The interior of the warehouse was brightly lit and surprisingly organized. Men in dark suits nodded respectfully as Lorenzo passed, their eyes flickering to me with curiosity before they quickly looked away. We walked through a vast space filled with shipping containers and forklifts, then through a heavy steel door into a corridor lined with offices. At the far end, 2 guards stood watch. They stepped aside without a word, opening the door for us. The room was Spartan, with bare concrete floors and a few metal chairs. Seated in the center was Isabella, her normally immaculate appearance disheveled, her expensive clothes wrinkled. When she saw me, her eyes widened in shock. "Elara!" she gasped, attempting to stand, but one of Lorenzo's men gently pressed her back into her seat. "Thank God. You have to get away from him. He's—" "Be careful with your next words, Ms. Bellini," Lorenzo interrupted, his voice deceptively mild. "I have brought Elara here to hear the truth directly from you. The games are over." Isabella's gaze darted between us, a flicker of calculation replacing her initial panic. "Elara, whatever he's told you—" "The truth, Isabella," I cut in, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "Were you ever really my friend? Or was I just another pawn like Julian?" Something shifted in her expression. Guilt, perhaps. "It wasn't like that at first," she said, her voice dropping. "We were friends, for real. But when my father discovered you were with Julian, he saw an opportunity." "An opportunity to place an asset," Lorenzo finished for her. "Tell her the rest." Isabella's shoulders slumped in defeat. Weak. If the woman I have so publicly claimed as mine were to abandon me, especially out of fear— He shrugged. "It creates an impression of vulnerability that my enemies would be quick to exploit." My head was spinning. "So I'm just a trophy? A pawn to be fought over?" "To them, yes," Lorenzo said, his voice hardening. "To me, never." I turned to face him fully, searching his expression for any sign of a lie. "And Julian? Is he really alive?" A dangerous light flashed in Lorenzo's eyes. "Would you prefer that he wasn't?" "Of course not. I need the truth." He nodded to one of his men, who produced a tablet and brought up a video file. On the screen was Julian, looking unharmed, seated at an outdoor cafe in a sunny, unfamiliar location. The timestamp indicated the footage was from earlier that day. "He works for me now," Lorenzo explained calmly, "from a very safe distance. His financial acumen is useful, and he has a powerful motivation to remain loyal." Relief warred with a fresh wave of betrayal. Julian, the father of my child, had used our relationship as a cover for his criminal dealings. Had anything in my life over the past few months been real? As if reading my thoughts, Lorenzo turned his attention back to Isabella. "You have served your purpose. My men will escort you back to your father with a message. Elara and her son are mine now. Any further attempts to interfere will be met with consequences that neither of you will survive." Isabella's face paled, but she managed a defiant lift of her chin. "He won't stop. You know that." "Then he is a fool," Lorenzo replied coldly. "And fools in our business do not live long." He turned back to me, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Wait for me in the car. This part of the conversation is not for you." Part of me wanted to argue, to demand to stay and witness everything, but the look in his eyes allowed for no debate. I let one of his men escort me back to the waiting sedan, my mind a chaotic storm of revelations. Inside the car, I watched the warehouse, half expecting to hear shouting or violence. Instead, 10 minutes me home, I said quietly, staring out at the blurred city lights. "To my home," I clarified. "My old apartment. I need time to think." His jaw tightened, a muscle flexing beneath his skin. "It is not safe there." "It was safe enough a few weeks ago," I countered. "That was before Bellini understood how important you and Leo are to me." Lorenzo shifted in his seat to face me, his dark eyes intense in the dim light of the car. "I understand you need space to process this, but I will not compromise your safety. Not for your comfort, not for mine." Before I could argue, he pressed a button on the console. "Take us to the penthouse," he instructed the driver, then turned back to me. "You and Leo can have the entire guest wing. I will not disturb you, but you will stay where I can ensure your protection." The quiet, unyielding authority in his voice should have infuriated me. Who was he to dictate where I could and could not go? But a profound exhaustion, both physical and emotional, was settling deep in my bones. I leaned my head back against the cool leather, suddenly too weary to fight. "Fine," I conceded. "But this doesn't mean I'm staying for good. I need to figure out what this all means for me, for Leo." "Fair enough." His relief was palpable, though he tried to conceal it. "Whatever you decide, know this. Everything I have done has been to protect you, even from truths I knew would cause you pain." We completed the journey in a tense silence, the city lights outside blurring through my unshed tears. By the time we arrived at his building, I had managed to compose myself, determined to salvage what little dignity I had left. The penthouse was just as I remembered it, sleek, modern, with breathtaking views of the city spread out like a carpet of jewels below. Lorenzo instructed his staff to prepare the guest wing for me and Leo, then turned to me. "Are you hungry? Our dinner was interrupted." The mere thought of food made my stomach churn. "No, I just want to sleep." He nodded, surprising me by maintaining his distance, not reaching for me as he usually would. A disoriented moment. I forgot where I was, until the events of the previous night came rushing back with sickening clarity. I sat up and saw a neatly folded stack of my own clothes on a nearby chair, retrieved from my old apartment. My son Leo was still with his sitter for the night, a small mercy in this chaos. After dressing, I cautiously made my way into the main living area, half expecting to find Lorenzo waiting. Instead, the apartment was silent. A note rested on the kitchen's marble island, written in his precise, elegant script. "Elara, business requires my attention this morning. Please, make yourself at home. A driver is at your disposal, though I hope you will consider staying until we can speak again. There are matters still unresolved between us. Whatever you decide, know that you are an unexpected light in a life long accustomed to darkness. L." I traced my fingers over his signature, trying to reconcile the man who had written these words with the cold, dangerous figure from the warehouse. The man who had threatened Isabella with casual menace, who had somehow coerced the father of my child into his service, who had men stationed outside my door while I slept. He was the same man who looked at me as if I were a rare treasure, who remembered how I took my coffee, who played Debussy on his grand piano late at night because he knew it was my favorite. A soft knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find a young woman holding a tray with fresh pastries and coffee. "Mr. Costello asked that this be brought up when you were awake," she said, placing the tray on the counter. "He also asked me to give you this." She handed me a small velvet box and then discreetly withdrew, leaving me alone once more. I hesitated, expecting jewelry, another lavish gift meant to bind me to him. When I finally found the courage to open it, I discovered not a diamond, but a single ornate key on a silver chain. A small card was tucked inside with a simple message. "Your freedom is yours alone to give. This is to my private estate by the lake. No security, no staff. Only peace, if you wish for it." Never felt more vibrant, more seen, than I did with him. The question was not just whether I could live with the truth of who he was. The more terrifying question was whether I could live without him. The lake house was precisely as Lorenzo had described. Secluded, tranquil, surrounded by ancient trees and the gentle sound of water lapping against the shore. I had been there for 3 days with Leo, my son's delighted laughter echoing in the quiet as he chased butterflies in the sprawling garden. We wandered through the spacious, sunlit rooms, sat on the dock with our feet in the cool water, and for the first time in weeks I could breathe. No security detail shadowed our movements. No household staff hovered nearby. I was simply a mother with her child, alone with my thoughts. Lorenzo had honored his promise, giving me the space I needed, though his presence was a subtle ghost in every room. It was there in the collection of classic children's books on the shelves, in the fully stocked kitchen that contained all of Leo's favorite snacks, in the grand piano by the window where I could almost see his hands moving across the keys. He had not contacted me since that last text message, respecting my need for distance. A part of me was immensely grateful. Another part of me ached with the silence. On the 4th morning, I woke to the soft patter of rain against the windows. The sky was a low uniform gray, turning the lake's surface to a sheet of steel that mirrored my own conflicted mood. I wrapped myself in a soft blanket and went to the kitchen to make coffee while Leo slept. As the rich aroma filled the air, I watched the rain-streaked landscape and finally came to a decision. I couldn't hide here forever, suspended between two realities. It was time to face the truth of my life, whatever that might be. I called the driver Lorenzo had left at my disposal and asked him to take us back to Sovereign City. As we drove through the misty countryside, I watched raindrops race down the window, Leo humming softly in his car seat beside me. And I wondered what was waiting for us at the end of the road. The penthouse was quiet when we arrived. Lorenzo's staff appeared to greet us, taking our bags. The living room, still dressed in a perfectly tailored suit despite the late hour, his dark hair slightly damp from the rain. His face was an unreadable mask, but his eyes, those dark, intense eyes that had haunted my thoughts at the lake, watched me with an intensity that made my heart pound. "I came to talk," I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "I have questions." He gave a single, sharp nod, shrugging out of his suit jacket and draping it over the back of a chair. "Ask anything. No more secrets." "Who are you?" I began, asking the most fundamental question of all. Not what your business is, not what you've done. Who are you, Lorenzo Costello? A flicker of surprise crossed his face, perhaps that my first question wasn't about his criminal activities. "I am a man who was born into one life and was forced to create another," he said after a moment, moving to the bar to pour 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to me before continuing. "My father died when I was 4, my mother when I was 7. My nonna raised me in Sicily until I was 15, when my uncle, my father's brother, brought me to America. He gestured for me to sit, taking the armchair opposite mine, maintaining a careful distance between us. My uncle was not a benevolent man, he continued, his accent growing more pronounced with the memory. He had built the Costello organization in this city, transforming a small family enterprise into something vast and violent. He wanted an heir, someone to mold in his own image. I was a convenient choice. "Did you have a choice?" I asked softly. His smile was bitter. "There is always a choice, Kata. Mine was between becoming what he desired or becoming a corpse. I chose to survive." He took a sip of his wine. "By the time I was 20, I was managing half of his operations. By 25, I had taken control of all of them." "After his convenient demise," I said, recalling the whispers from the staff at Serafina's. Lorenzo's eyes met mine and he did not flinch. "Yes, a heart attack according to the official report. The timing was very fortuitous." "Did you—" "I have done things, ordered things, that would horrify you. But I have lines I do not cross. No drugs, no human trafficking, no violence against innocents." "And Julian?" I challenged. "Was he an innocent?" Lorenzo's face hardened. "He stole $2 million from one of my companies. Money that belonged not just to me, but to the families of the people I employ. When he was caught, he offered you and your son as bargaining chips. No, Alara, Julian was not innocent." I flinched at the coldness in his voice, at the sharp reminder of Julian's betrayal. So everything between us started because of him, because of business. Lorenzo stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back, a restless energy radiating from him. "It began that way, yes. I wanted to see this woman he thought could distract me. I was curious, perhaps even amused. But the moment I saw you—" He stopped directly in front of me, his dark eyes blazing. "With cocoa on your cheek, and that stubborn set to your chin as Matteo pushed you forward, everything changed." "How can I believe that?" I whispered, even as a part of me desperately wanted to. He knelt before my chair, bringing our faces level, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath, though he still didn't touch me. "Because in my world, Alara, I could have had you brought to me. I could have taken whatever I wanted through force or fear. Instead, I came to your restaurant night after night to talk about pastries and books. I learned your favorite color, your dreams for your son, the way your voice softens when you speak of your family." His words washed over me, evoking memories of those first tentative evenings. "I did not plan to care for you," he continued, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't name. "It was an inconvenience, a danger. Caring for someone makes a man vulnerable, and in my position, vulnerability is a weakness I cannot afford." "Then why?" "Because some forces cannot be controlled," he interrupted, finally reaching out to take my hands in his. "Not even by men who are accustomed to controlling everything." I looked down at our joined hands, his large and strong, marked with faint world, with all its dangers and complexities. "You accept my protection, which may at times feel restrictive, but will always be for your safety and Leo's. You accept that there are parts of my business you can never know, not from a lack of trust, but because the knowledge itself would place you in peril." "Would I be a prisoner in a gilded cage?" I asked bluntly. His expression softened. "No, Alara. You would be my partner, my confidant in all things outside of my business. Your life would still be your own. Your baking, your friends, your family. With adjustments for security, yes. But not a prison. Never that. And us? What would we be?" Lorenzo rose, gently pulling me to my feet until we stood heart to heart. "We would be what we already are. Two people who found each other against impossible odds. Two souls who recognized something essential in the other. He lifted a hand to cup my cheek, his touch achingly tender. I am not a good man by most standards, Alara, but I promise I will be a good man to you and to your son. You would want for nothing, not safety, not freedom within reason, and certainly not love. The word hung in the air between us, a raw declaration he had never made before. I searched his face, seeking any sign of manipulation, but found only a stark vulnerability that seemed to have cost him everything to reveal. I need time, I said finally. Not away, here, with you, to see what this life really means, day to day. To make a choice with my eyes open. Relief washed over his features. Then time is what you shall have. Stay here. See how we fit together in this world. If at any point you decide it is not for you, you have only to say the word. And you would let me go? Just like that? His smile was laced with sadness. Not just like that, Kara. It would break something vital within me. But yes, I would let you go. The weeks that followed settled into a strange new rhythm. Lorenzo integrated me into the legitimate side of his life. Dinners with business partners, charity functions, meetings with his hospitality managers. He was true to his word about the other parts, sometimes disappearing for contentment on his face. The night he took me to a rooftop garden he'd had installed, filled with herbs, because I'd once mentioned missing my old window box. Through it all, he never pressed me for a final decision. Never tried to sway my choice beyond simply being himself. A complex, controlled man, capable of both terrifying coldness and breathtaking tenderness. Then came the night that forced my hand. I was at one of Lorenzo's downtown restaurants, overseeing a new menu launch. It was late, well past closing, and I was alone in the kitchen with just two of Lorenzo's men waiting by the exit. Lorenzo was due to pick me up after a meeting he'd been characteristically vague about. As I packed up the last of the sample pastries, I heard a commotion from the dining room, shouted voices, the crash of something heavy. Before I could process it, the kitchen door flew open and three men I didn't recognize stormed in, weapons drawn. "Don't move," the leader snarled, his eyes filled with contempt. "Costello's little baker, right? You're coming with us." My security detail was gone, neutralized. As the men advanced, I backed away until my hand hit the marble countertop, my fingers closing around the first thing they found, a heavy wooden rolling pin. "Mr. Bellini sends his regards," one of them sneered, grabbing for my arm. In that instant, a primal, maternal instinct took over. I swung the rolling pin with every ounce of my strength, connecting with the side of the man's head. He staggered back, cursing, as the other two lunged. I fought with a ferocity I didn't know I possessed, knocking over trays and equipment, using the chaos of the kitchen as my defense. A gunshot cracked through the air, and a searing pain exploded in my upper arm. Warm blood soaked my sleeve as I stumbled backward, cornered against the industrial ovens. The leader raised his gun, aiming it at my chest. "Bellini wanted you alive, but dead works too. A message is a message." I closed my eyes, bracing for an impact that never came. Instead, the kitchen doors crashed open again, and the world erupted into violence. When I opened my eyes, Lorenzo stood in the doorway, a gun in his hand and a look of pure murder on his forehead to mine. "When I got the alert that your detail was down, when I could not reach you," he swallowed hard, "I have never known such fear." As his team dealt with the aftermath, Lorenzo personally carried me to his car, insisting his private doctor meet us at the penthouse. He never left my side as the doctor cleaned and stitched the wound, his face a mask of controlled fury that only softened when he looked at me. Later, after the doctor had left and the penthouse was quiet, Lorenzo brought me tea in bed, sitting beside me with an uncharacteristic hesitation. "This is why," he said quietly. "This is why I could not bear the thought of you and Leo alone in your old apartment. Bellini was waiting for an opportunity. I nodded, understanding now in a visceral way I hadn't before. The security that had sometimes felt oppressive was the only thing that stood between my family and men like those in the kitchen. "What happens to them?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know. Lorenzo's expression hardened. "They will provide information. Then they will face the consequences for touching what is mine." "Will you kill them?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. He held my gaze. "Do you truly want to know the answer to that, Ilara?" I thought for a long moment, then shook my head. "No, I don't think I do." Some lines were better left uncrossed. "This changes things," he said after a while. "After tonight, Bellini will escalate. It is no longer safe for you here in Sovereign City." Fear clutched at my heart. "You're sending me away?" "No," he said firmly, taking my hands. "I would never send you away. But I think it is time we both left. For a while. I have properties in other countries, businesses that require my attention. We could go to Italy, to the villa where I grew up, or Switzerland, anywhere you wish." "We?" I repeated, catching the significance. "If you will have me," he said, a vulnerability in his voice I had rarely heard. "If you have made your choice." Looking at him then, the formidable man who had charged into a gunfight for me, who now sat offering me the world with uncertainty in his eyes. That moment, with the lights of Sovereign City glittering below and the echo of danger still sharp in my mind, I knew I had crossed a threshold. There was no going back to the person I once was, the pastry chef whose greatest fear was a burned batch of cookies. But as Lorenzo's arms tightened around me, his steady heartbeat a reassurance beneath my ear, I found I didn't want to go back. This complex, dangerous, beautiful life with him was where I belonged now. Whatever came next, we would face it together.